welcome back to the podcast. We are I am Maddie Q, and this is RangerAlthynia, and we are the Misty Girl podcast. I'm just rolling with the punches. I'm not redoing that intro for the fifth time.
Maddie, you said it right.
I stumbled, but it's fun. Oh yeah, I said your name right. That's what you meant. I thought you meant like I said got through the intro about an issue. I was like, no, that's a lie.
No, like this is momentous. I think that's the first time you've actually said it right on the first shot.
That's on the podcast. I've said it right on stream.
Yeah, you have on stream.
Ignore my messy background, guys. I moved to California like a week ago, and my stuff isn't gonna be here for like another week. So, hi. Also, if you hear my fan in the background, I'm literally melting, so I apologize.
Hey, we'll just say that your bedroom currently is move-in chic. It's cool.
No, I refuse to accept that. So, Major, what are we talking about today?
So, guys, we are talking about witchcraft. This is a topic that both of us have been very, very interested in for a very long time. I know for me, it's probably been a wee bit longer than Maddie, but I am going to come to California.
Hey, go to Disneyland with me. Let's go.
Yes.
Well, when it's safer, I guess, to go.
Yes. We got social distance and wear a mask. We can't be having any COVID going on around here.
We'll just fight each other while social distance. We'll just like throw masks at each other.
We'll throw hands in the middle of Disneyland. It's okay.
Exactly.
It's fine.
We won't get kicked out.
But anyway, so witchcraft. What the heck is it? Since I can't swear because it's YouTube.
Give it like 5 seconds and then you can swear.
No, it has to be like 5-10 minutes and then we're good.
Anyway. 5 seconds is close enough.
So witchcraft. So it is something that is a very long-standing thing. It has existed for, I don't even know for how long. Millennia? Decades? Centuries?
All the above.
All the above?
All the above.
There's a lot of kinds of witchcraft.
Meditation is technically a form of like witchcraft, depending on how you practice it. Of course, meditation in itself is not witchcraft. There's also like spell work with that. Like you could be into like I think not FEG. That's not the right word I wanted. Well, there's things into that we'll talk about at a later point. Like also voodoo and hoodoo are part of it. Along with like other forms. There's also candle magic, which is its own thing. Like a lot of these topics are like very generic and we're not going to discuss them in this podcast in a lot of detail with some minor exceptions when we get into later topics. Then there's also crystals, which again, that's kind of like meditation isn't by default a witchy thing, but it is a decent part of witchcraft depending how you practice. With that as well, witchcraft is different for everyone. Everyone does it slightly differently. There is no correct way necessarily to do things with the exception of spell work and like candle magic. There are like guidelines you should try to stay in to not upset the cosmos and the universe's natural flow. And then there's also general like magic, which would tie into like candle magic, and spell work, which that is spelled with a K at the end. So it's magic with a K. And then there's also spirit work with subcategories of tarot, pendulums, and then spirit boards or Ouija boards. But Ouija boards is technically just a brand, not the actual name for the board to contact the undead.
Yeah. And then there's a lot of other kinds of crafts. Like there's green witchcraft and several others that I can't remember off the top of my head. We have a whole list of them that we created like a month and a half ago, a whole list of them that we're not going to talk about today because today is a little bit more general as far as that type of information goes. But we'll have future podcasts where we talk more about them and kind of like our experiences with them or like what we know about them and things of that nature. But today's a little bit more about just kind of
the gay agenda.
Who are we? Why the hell do we care about witchcraft and
what it means to us?
Why, when? Yeah, what it means to us.
So, Ranger, what was your first exposure to the Witch of the Craft?
To the Witch of the Craft. That's great.
Thank you. Very clever.
My first exposures, or my first time I kind of learning some of the stuff about it, actually pertains more to astrology and the things along those lines originally. Back when I was in like elementary and middle school, Well, first, let me backtrack. For those of you that don't know watching this podcast, I was raised by my grandparents. That's actually relevant to the subject. So my first exposure actually involves my grandmother. She was a fabulous, amazing woman. When I was a kid, though, she got into the AOL, America Online, for those that don't know what AOL is.
Ranger's showing her age, everyone.
I'm showing my age. AOL chat rooms. A lot of them about like psychics and astrology and tarot, and less of the more of the candle magic and the crystals and stuff, but more of like the astrology and the tarot and things of that nature. So she got more into like those type of things, and by extension, I started getting kind of more of that exposure to and learning more about it just through her, through the people she was meeting and talking to, because I would actually, especially once she moved from AOL to Pal Talk, for anyone who knows what that program was or is.
What the hell is that?
Think of it like, I'm trying to think of a good example of it. It's basically a voice chat / chat room program.
Okay.
And it has like different, you could create a chat room for different subjects and topics. Like they had topics spanning like witchcraft. They had rooms for teenagers and kids. They had rooms for dating. They had rooms about board games. They like just topics of all. If you can think of a topic, there was probably a room on Pal Talk for it.
Okay.
But she moved from AOL to there, where they talked more about like the candle magic, the crystals, the spell work, the meditation, like all, of course, the astrology and all that too, runes, and all that sorts of stuff.
Ooh, I saw native side of those.
And once she started doing more, getting into those voice chat rooms, like I would quite often, I'd be sitting in her office with her, talking to her when she'd be in these rooms. So I'd be hearing them talking about crystals, what's their meanings, what do they do, how do you use them, same with spell work, tarot. I would listen to them do tarot readings, psychic readings, things of that nature. So I grew up around some amount of this, of like the witchcraft or the supernatural type of subject. A lot, like, because she was so big into it, and then by extension, just by that exposure and learning it, like I started getting into it more. But yeah, that's basically kind of it.
I love that. So you're technically like what, second, potentially third generation, or no? You'd be like, it
goes farther back than that, actually.
So you have your family, basically, you're a generational witch. I don't know if that's the right term, but
here's the strange part, fun fact about my family, or at least my maternal grandmother's family, is when it comes to certain type, almost like the psychic abilities, but not really, kinda. It skips generations.
Oh, so you got a fancier version of what I have. I could just get diabetes every other masculine generation of my family.
So my generation, quote unquote, so me and my kid sister would be the generation to have it. My mother and her siblings would not. My grandmother did. Her father did not. Her grandmother did. And rinse and repeat, going back and back and back and back.
So do you have like psychic abilities and like talking about that, since it should be on your generation by that?
So grandma and a lot of the people that she dealt with that was into this were like, yeah, she's definitely does, or definitely going to. Grandma definitely did. Like, I swear, I could have done some things 5 states over and she'd be like, what'd you do? Like, she would know. She would just know. But as for me, I think partially just from, and there's some backstory I'm not going to go into as far as this goes, but due to some of my history where I kind of rejected all of it, everything, like all of this.
Oh.
And Maddie, if you're curious, we could talk about it later. I'm just not going to talk about it on the podcast.
No, you got it. Yeah, I got you.
If I had any of the ability, a lot of it went poof.
Yeah.
But even now, I still have, every so often, I'll just kind of get that gut feeling, intuition type of thing. And then it'll be right. And I'm like, hold up, how the fuck? But nothing like my grandmother did.
I know
like
rejecting gifts and stuff, especially when you're at a younger age, can really negatively affect the gifts that you were like born with.
Yeah.
But I know there's also ways of like I think meditation and like, you know, stuff like that and just natural ways and spell work and stuff. I think there are ways to like strengthen that connection, which is something I need to work into, but I'll get that into that when it's my turn to speak.
What is your first experience or exposure to the craft, Maddie?
Well, you talking about like your experiences actually made me think technically my first experience I suppose would be in high school, just because I had like friends into like tarot and stuff, and I had like a friend who actually I think read my tarot. She had like this really pretty Shakespearean tarot deck in high school. It was like really cute. So technically I would say that was kind of my first indication with it, but like actually like really like trying to get into it myself, because besides like random like friends or actors I've worked with and stuff that have tarot and have read my tarot, is like I think it was a year or two now or something along those lines, where I started looking at like I was on Witch Talk on like TikTok, or like looking at a bunch of like YouTube videos and stuff on it. And so there was that. That's like what got me really into it, I guess, which I guess technically is my first exposure. That kind of ties into like what got me into it. But I mean, we go farther back. It's kind of like, I feel like being like a psychic or whatever, having those abilities doesn't necessarily default to witchcraft, but it can heavily influence, I think, your crafts. When I was younger, it still happens now. I talk about randomly all the time. I'm very connected to the spiritual world, and I am. It was a lot more present when I was younger. I would constantly just see, like, you people may think I'm crazy, but like I was a child. I don't think children can have schizophrenia. But no, like I would constantly like see like the spirits and like ghosts and stuff like that. I remember like one time very specifically, my mom and I were going out of the bathroom after she was like helping me brush my teeth because I was small. I know, it's shocking. I was a tiny baby. I remember like looking downstairs and just seeing a shadow. And I was like, I tried to tell my mom someone was down there. And she's like, no one's down there. I was like, there's literally someone down there. I can see them. Which again, this technically doesn't like necessarily tie into witchcraft, but because of what I focus on in my craft is spirit work, it kind of, in my opinion, like, you know, kind of ties into, I guess, my first exposure in that sense. Since there are people who are like mediums who practice witchcraft, which I would say my medium abilities aren't as strong as they used to be, just because I didn't spend the time necessary to, I think, hone the skills, because I wasn't really sure how to do it. But my first experience as a witchcraft, I feel like, is way more basic and boring. It was just like, oh, my friends are in tarot. Oh, I have a relatively strong connection to the spirit world. YouTube. Nothing fancy, like Ranger's like family history.
Yeah, I know, like, anytime my family history gets brought up as far as that, and it's like, the fact it's multi-generational, it's like, hold up.
I'm jealous, honestly. Like, I would love to be have multi-generations of witches in my family. I would have been able to be such a better witch now than someone who keeps getting stressed out and then forgetting the craft, because I haven't really heavily practiced in a while. I mean, it doesn't help that people haven't been asking me for tarot readings recently either, but...
Yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like, even with my grandmother, and I don't know about her grandmother, since by the time I came around, her grandmother had passed, like, I think 10 or 20 years before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
But like, not, at least as far as my grandmother was concerned, she never referred to it as witchcraft, and she never referred to herself as a witch or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Outside of like jokes where she'd say she's a witch spelled with a B.
I feel like, honestly, a lot of like older generations though don't realize that they're actually a witch or practice the craft, even though they technically are.
And I think for her, like, she knew like witchcraft is called witchcraft, mm-hmm. and magic is called magic. I just think for her, she didn't identify it as you know what I mean? Like, she knows, like, it wasn't like something else, like, that's not magic or that's not witchcraft, but she just didn't identify as like a witch.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't think you have to either. Like, I think you can practice the craft or technically practice the craft without having to say you're practicing witchcraft or you identify as a witch. Like, I personally choose to identify myself as a witch, even though I'm based, it's very much so in the basics of it, mostly because I'm very anxious about starting spell work, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I've never identified myself as a witch, and I can't see myself ever really identifying as a witch outside of, like, again, sometimes I'll make the same joke my grandmother made, or I'll make a joke about how I'm a Ravenclaw from Harry Potter, like that kind of witch, but not like a serious identification of as a witch or as part of, even though I participate in.
How come? Just out of curiosity.
I'm not entirely sure. It's just a title that I've ever really had resonate very much, I guess.
No, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, it's part of the reason why I don't really call myself a medium, just because, like, I have connections to the spirit world. And I mean, you see me, I do tarot better than, like, other people I know. And when I work on my pendulums, they go freaking insane. But, like, you know, I mean, everyone has a right, I think, to, like, identify what they do. I mean, you also are very much aware, though, like, practices you do, you are technically practicing witchcraft, but you can practice without calling yourself
a witch. Yeah,
like, just like you could have psychic abilities and not say I'm a psychic, or you could have medium abilities and like I'm a medium. Like, you don't have to identify with any title you don't want to. I mean, we had an entire conversation about, like, queer labels freaking on the podcast, so last episode.
Yeah, which if you haven't watched it, you should go watch that one.
You should watch all of them. It was like episode 4. I mean, we've been really inconsistent for uploading, but, like, we don't talk about it.
We're gonna get better. We'll get better eventually.
One day, maybe. Sponsor us.
I mean, if we were sponsored, we'd be a lot more consistent then. But no, but yeah, no, that's why, like, as far as identifying goes. But then again, it's also one of those things I shouldn't say I would never do so, and I probably never will. Because, like, even as far as, like, my identity goes in general, not necessarily just with this topic, but across the board over the years, it's slowly been evolving. Like, looking more at religion, not witchcraft, I used to identify as an atheist, then a spiritual atheist, and now I'm more like, I'm leaning towards identifying more as a spiritual agnostic.
I actually had a similar thing with that. Like, I used to, go. Sorry.
So I shouldn't say, like, yeah, that's never gonna happen, because who knows, maybe in a year or two I'll be like, yeah, I'm a witch. Who knows? Yeah,
like, I know for me, like, I have a similar thing. I never really fully, I don't really, like, until, like, recently I really ever fully believed in witchcraft as, like, a thing that's actually factual, because people demonize it and play it down and stuff, and media, you know, like, I love Sabrina, I love the Netflix series of Sabrina, but that's, like, your exposure to media is, like, stuff like that, or, like, Charmed and stuff like that. Like, because for me, like, I had a similar thing as Ranger. Like, I used to identify as an atheist, and then I turned that into agnostic, and now I'm just identify more as, like, a spiritual person, because my belief with, like, you know, deities or God, whatever you want to call them, or gods and goddesses, as I don't fully believe in them as, like, this complete higher power. I think a lot of them do actually exist, if not all of them, from our history. I do think a lot of what they have been fabricated to instill fear into the human race from people with wealth and power. But I just see them kind of as, like, spiritual beings with a little bit higher energy that I personally feel were human at one point in time, most likely. I think a lot of spirits come from actuality. I think, like, a lot of them, like, even demonic or evil, more, like, sinister spirits, I think a lot of them were people at some point, or animals, or some type of living creature that, you know, like, passed and moved on to the spirit realm. That's kind of how my stuff. That's why I identify as a spiritualist over. I don't really condone to any religion, because, again, like I said, I think religion, pretty much all religions, I think, have been fabricated a lot. Not just for fear by the wealthy, but also to give people a sense of hope in some cases. Or, you know, to some cases of just spread of hateful rhetoric. Anyways, that word. Because, you know, like homosexuality as a sin was not an original thing in the Bible. So
yeah, and I think that's also part of where I'm like, things are in such a state of flux as far as I'm concerned, because even when it comes to like the pagan gods or the Wiccan gods or
Wiccan
actually
goddess.
basically anything but the Christian god, I should say, anything outside of the Christian god, I never really gave much consideration to. So that's why I almost think, even as far as my title of spiritual agnostic, I had to take him and I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
It may eventually change, just because that's because I don't believe in the Christian God, is why I originally started going as atheist. So I've never considered as far as like any of the pagan gods or anything. Like, what are my thoughts? Do I believe that they exist? Do I not? So maybe with more introspection or reflection and everything else, that maybe things will change. But yeah.
I mean,
we're work in progress, guys.
Yeah, basically. I mean, like, for me, like, I didn't really start, I was agnostic until I started, like, looking into witchcraft and stuff, and then I was, like, somewhat looking up, also just getting exposure to it from, like, TikTok and stuff about, like, different deities, and I say deities because that's normally the term most people use, especially within witchcraft, instead of, like, gods or goddesses. And I prefer that term because, again, I see that, like, a lot of demons and, like, gods or goddesses as just higher beings. Slightly, not higher beings. I don't like that term. Like, just, I guess,
more energy.
More energy. Like higher, like a slightly elevated spirit. Still a spirit, like a normal spirit, like a ranger. A
more defined spirit.
Yeah. Potentially people who had probably people who had a huge impact, honestly. And I think I want to say, like, a lot of Native American religions, don't quote me on that. Like, a lot of their gods were actual people at one point. In time. Don't quote me on that because I have not fully looked into that. That is just some stuff that I've seen come across my like social medias and stuff that I haven't had time to really fact check. But I know there are a lot of religions where a lot of their gods and deities and stuff like come from factual people who were actually people and alive, you know?
Yeah.
I just use Native Americans, that was just popped into my head first. But, you know, so Ranger, question. What got you into craft? I guess yours kind of ties into, like, your first exposure a little bit,
which I kind of accidentally answered this one already, but I guess I could go a little bit more into it. So basically, it goes back to, again, that first exposure, the fact that I kind of got involved with it with my grandmother. And then with her having her experiences and her abilities and everything, when I was a kid and a teenager and everything, prior to the experience that we're not going to talk about, she was doing a lot of trying to teach me kind of like what she knew. Like a lot of it. When it comes to like energy work, when it came to less the crystals and candles, we didn't start really getting into that until actually after I started dating my now husband, actually. But she was trying to teach me, like, how to tell, like, what's that intuition, like, figuring out what's the intuition and what is just me knowing.
Yeah.
Because common sense. Like, what's the difference between the two? Noticing the difference. What to do when I get that hunch or that gut feeling, like, what to do with it. How to deal with it. Like, even just stuff like, again, energy work.
I want to do an entire podcast on you just talking about like things you learned of your grandma.
Yeah, no, legitimately, I probably could, but just things of that nature. So like, she was actively trying to teach me, and of course, eventually, like, I went to college and everything, and we kind of stopped doing that just by nature of she was 600 miles away, and it was just hard to. And then stuff happened, and then I cloistered that off somewhere until literally again I was dating him and got into more of a good mental space where I'm like, okay, I'm ready to try again and start learning again, which is then we actually went into doing little classes almost with a friend of hers.
That's so cute.
So me, her, and this friend of hers would actually sit down once a week and have like a class because her friend is actually a Wiccan witch. So she was like teaching us about like the candles and the crystals and creating spells and all that type of stuff. So it was actually really cool. And I think that's actually of the more recent time, that's kind of what cemented me into being more into this type of craft, because I finally had reached a point where I was comfortable enough to get into it. Not enough to be completely active in it, and even now, like, I just don't have the time or the mental energy, like we were kind of talking beforehand, for it. But it was the beginning of me getting into that headspace and into that comfort zone where I'm like, this is what I'm interested in, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Okay. I love that. I just love that you being in like a little class of like your grandma. I just think that's so cute. I love that imagery so much. It's cute. But I also, relating, like, I keep like just stopping the craft in random periods of time just because like time and stress. Like I love witchcraft. I do, but sometimes you don't want to just like sit down and do the research that you need to do to expand your craft and your knowledge,
Yeah.
And like, I don't think we said this, but witchcraft is like a craft. This is just literally what it is. Like, it's called witchcraft for a reason, basically, is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And like, I know for me, like, I haven't gotten into like candle magic or like a lot of spell work stuff. And I don't really have an interest in meditation. I am very fidgety as a person. I don't think meditation is something I could personally do. But I don't know. Not my first exposure. I got into the craft actually from someone I'm not friends with anymore because she was into the craft. And the Ranger and I were talking a little bit about it around at the same time. This was like I actually haven't really been into the craft for like a full year even yet. Well, it's been roughly a year, I guess, more or less now. But it was like like for someone again I'm not friends with anymore because she was her partner were really, really toxic. So Ranger and our entire friend group like. Hi. But no, yeah, she was. I can still thank her for why I actually finally got myself into witchcraft because she was really into it, and so we would have random conversations about it. And then I found Ranger was kind of into it as well. And so I started watching a lot of YouTube videos. My favorite YouTuber to actually watch with it and she has a playlist that I'll put below for like basic witchcraft stuff. The Witch of Wonderlust. I love her. She's so sweet.
She is a very sweet YouTuber. I like watching her.
No, I love her. She's absolutely amazing. I know I need to catch up. I'm really behind on her witchy videos. I don't remember the last one I watched. But like my biggest exposure, actually kind of going back to my first exposure, I guess, my main exposure was actually her. I had like some people around me, like Ranger, ex-friends and stuff. Yeah. But she has an entire playlist of like most are her videos, some are like other people's videos. Some videos actually going into somewhat of what voodoo and hoodoo is, which was like really nice and educational. But it was like really cool just having like a playlist on her channel that she makes and works on that I was able to just like go through and watch. And that was like my biggest thing. And to this day, I am very afraid of getting into spell work and mostly candle magic. I haven't really gone into either because I don't feel like I've done enough research on more so spell work. Candle magic, I feel like I have enough information that I could probably do some basic spells. But doing spell work, I'm like, both of them, like, I want to do more, and I'm just like, I'm afraid of touching them because I don't want something to like backfire, and then it's like getting the opposite effect. Like if I did like a money bowl or like a money spell or something or money candle and like it backfired, and then I was like, I'm out like $600. I really should think about doing a money bowl because your boy needs a car. But no, I mean, that's basically what got me into the craft, though, was like, again, friends / ex-friends, and then like an amazing YouTuber, honestly. And then from there was like lots of TikTok videos and stuff like that. Also, ignore the fact that half of my face is slowly turning into white. I am so white. I am reflecting the sunlight coming out from outside through my window onto my face. You're welcome.
So the thing that's hysterical about you mentioning it is I literally didn't even realize it. Like it's so bright where you're at, and then if you look behind me, it is clearly nighttime.
It's literally black outside, which is weird to me because it's like, no, I mean not really. Because when I just moved from Virginia and like it would still be sunny sometimes at like 9 p.m. and I'm like, it's literally 9 at night. Why is the sun not down? And like, so I was East Coast and Rangers in Central
Midwest.
Yeah, like Midwest Central time zone though, And it's just like weird how the sun sets differently in different places,
Yeah, it's funny because it's like looks like it's the middle of the day for you and it looks like it's the middle of the night for me.
I mean, maybe it is. I mean, it is like 9 for you, so you're 3 more hours.
Yeah, 3 more, it'll be the middle of the night. But yeah, so I thought you were more into it or for longer than that. I didn't realize it had only been about a year.
I had interest, especially within like the spirit realm, and I've always had like an obsession with like spirit boards and like planchettes and stuff like that and tarot, but I never really did like a lot of research into it until like last summer-ish. It's I think around the time it started, just because it was something I wasn't really exposed to until like I became friends with like you and like other people who were in the craft. I never thought it was like really an actual thing. Because especially because like I knew like Wiccan was a thing, like Wicca was a thing, but like I never had anyone really talk to me about like what Wicca was and how not all Wiccans are witches, just a lot of them are. But I never really had anyone like, you know, talk to me about that type of stuff before, you know, and I never did my research. I was like, oh, that's just not real. It's not something that's a thing. Magic isn't real. Well, magic is like an actual thing. Again, it's spelled with like it's spelled Magick. For like actual magic versus movie magic.
Yeah, and the thing about it too, and the thing that's kind of intriguing me when it comes to magic or spell work and candle magic and all of it is like at the end of the day, even if we want to assume that magic doesn't exist, it's still just a good form of like focusing intent.
I mean, energy.
Yeah, and focusing energy and intent, and it forces you to focus like, what is it that you want?
I mean, I feel like a lot of magic is literally just the energy and the way the universe shifts itself and that energy. And that's a lot of what magic is energy work and intention. And if you don't have full intention that something's going to work, it's probably not going to work. You have to have the right intention if you're doing like a love spell, which are very, very cautious of love spells. Those are the most common spells to like
I wouldn't do all that.
I would do self-love spells personally, or like love strengthening spells for like friendships and stuff, but you don't want to do love spells for like, I want this person to be my boyfriend, like my partner. Like, don't do that because then you're manipulating people at that point is really what it comes down to.
That's why I'd even be hesitant doing like a friendship strengthening one without the other person's permission.
I mean, if you have the consent, I think it could be nice. If it's just you want to strengthen your already like strong bond or something, like I think that could be like an interesting thing, but that comes down consent.
Consent, yeah. Because that's the big thing to me is anything involving other people. Consent.
Yeah. I mean, there's also, like, I know some people who do money spells and stuff without asking someone first, but, like, I feel like that's different because you're not trying to manipulate someone's relationships. You're trying to help them.
And see, even with something like that, to me, that would still be something like, I want to do this for you. Is it okay if I do this for you? Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess that's fair. I mean, I wish people had that mentality with praying, because I don't like when people are like, I'm going to pray for you. I'm like, I don't really believe in your God and that. Can you not? Because I've always been uncomfortable when someone says they want to pray for me. Like, I get the gesture, but like,
it's like thanks. Like usually, like to me, I get uncomfortable too. But I'm like thanks because I know they mean well. Usually.
Yeah, I mean, I just see that as a similar thing, but I guess at the same time with spellcraft, it's a little different. Because you do like a money spell, and someone's like, "Yeah, you can do that," or they say, "No, you can't." I feel like not having that permission can have a chance, like it can heighten the chance of the spell not working. But at the same time, if you don't ask for their permission, they're like, sure, I don't believe in that, then it's like, I probably wouldn't do it even with their permission, because if they say they don't believe in it, it's not going to work. I feel like it'd be more likely to work to like do a money spell for someone you know, and then not tell them about it, but you know that they would, only if like you know that they're okay with it, because the spell's not going to work if it's for that person and they actually put that energy out there that they don't believe in it. Because it's the same thing if you're doing a money spell for yourself. If you say, especially when you say something verbally, you're putting more negative energy than just thinking it, which you really shouldn't do either.
Yeah, and to me, it's not even a matter of like belief or anything like that, but it's like when you're doing something with the intention of, and I mean this in the most positive way, when you're doing something with the intent of manipulating something else. So like manipulating the situation to create more money or to create a more positive relationship or to create whatever positive thing you're trying to create from it. At the end of the day, you're still trying to change somebody else's anything, regardless of whether they believe or not. So like I shouldn't be trying to change, like witchcraft aside, I shouldn't be trying to change your life without your consent or permission or asking for that.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
So like it's less of a witchcraft thing and more of a general, if I'm going to be having my sticky little fingers all over your life, I should probably ask you before I start just doing shit. Like,
don't change people's lives without consulting them first. Thank you and welcome to our TED Talk. In all seriousness, no, you should ask for consent if you're going to do a spell on someone, for someone. I mean, and I personally, again, I wouldn't, if they told me, thanks, sure, I don't really believe in it, I just wouldn't do it because they've now kind of ruined that spell before I even did it by saying they don't believe in it. Just based off like things I've looked into and how spell work works, is a lot of it's an energy and intent. If someone's putting that energy in there on your thing, on your spell, especially if it's about someone else, you know, it's more likely, I personally think, to like not work.
And see, to me, it would depend, because like I've had people that are like, yeah, please, that isn't my thing, but please do. I could use all the positive vibes or energy or what have you, even though they didn't necessarily specifically believe in this.
Well, see, I think that phrasing is different than if someone said literally, I do not believe in that. You know, it's like, that's not my thing. I think it's completely different than, I don't think this is going to work, you know, or this does, I don't believe that at all. But go have fun, you know.
I feel generally, though, most people that are just firmly, that does not exist, are going to be like, please don't.
Yeah, I guess that's fair, too. I can see that point. So, Ranger, the big question of the hour, I don't know actually how long we've been recording for. Why do you practice the crafts of the witches?
So, I think when it comes to the why, it also comes down to the what's.
Who, what, where, and why?
Yes. So, as far as practicing anything, and again, keeping in mind I haven't been able to the last couple months for the most part, just because I've had so much going on that it kind of had to get backburnered for my own mental health. And I try and go into this with positive mental health and positive energy, because I know I can, speaking for myself, get really bad energy. It's a bad juju going on.
Yeah, I mean, negative energy can also affect your spell work and stuff too.
So I try not to do too much when I'm just not in a good headspace, which I haven't been for a while, just because I bit off more than I could chew, frankly. But generally I do more like tarot with my crystals, with candle magic. Candle magic especially more so than the other two, though I'm trying to get more into like the tarot. So the reason why, so the three basically kind of boil down to the same reason, is I kind of use them again to kind of focus that intent. I know I want certain things, so I'm going to try and do what I can to reach them. With tarot, usually it's I need an answer to something. Like I remember, what was it? Probably about a year ago. No, 2 years. It'll be 2 years ago this year. I remember it was either right around Halloween or right around Christmas. I pulled out one of my tarot decks because I was having a really rough time, because it was the first year after my grandmother passed away, actually. So I pulled out my tarot deck because I was having a rough time. My grandfather was coming up. I was just emotionally devastated because it was going to be the first Christmas without her, I think it was. To just ask, like, what do? How do? What do?
I love that. I'm sorry. I know it's like you're emotional right now talking about this, but I love that so much.
Just pulling cards like, what do I do with him? How do I handle him? Because of course, they were married for over 50 years. Like, how do I handle my grandfather? What do I do for him when I'm devastated? Like, what do? Because normally, ironically, the person I would usually go to in a situation like that would have been her. Ironically. There's a reason why I consider that the worst loss I've ever had. But I pulled out the tarot cards, like asking, like, what do, how do, where do. And I can't, I'll be honest, I don't even remember which card I pulled. I don't even remember which deck I used. But all I know is I pulled like 3 cards out and one flipped out. And personally, if I'm pulling on my cards and a card flips out, I take that as I'm supposed to read that card. Personally.
Oh, yeah, I got.
Yeah.
You've been to some of my streams. My cards like just
Like all over the place. But
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Every so often I get a card flip, so I'm like, oh, let me grab that one too while I'm at it. But and I can't remember what, like I said, I can't remember what deck or the cards were, but just it basically came back to doing what I had to do or something, whatever, something positive. So for me, a lot of it is trying to get those answers or clear my headspace enough to where I can come up with the solutions or come up with my answers or get that intention I need, like with the candle magic. The fact that I have to look at like, what is it do I need? Or what is it do I want that I'm going to be doing this spell work or this candle magic work? Okay, so which candle do I use? Which oil do I anoint it with? What symbol do I put on the candle if I put any? Like, what day do I do it on? The fact that it involves so much intent forces me to focus in a way that most other things can't.
Indeed.
And then that too is just a very, I'm trying to think how to word this part because I've never actually verbalized this part, but there's just something very spiritually calming about the whole thing. Including even like with crystals. I don't do so much active work with crystals.
Yeah.
With the crystals, it's more passive. Like I have clear quartz raw in just about every room of my house.
I would have clear quartz if people weren't fucking thieves.
Yeah, I know, really. I'm sure that's a story we'll actually go into in a future podcast when we're talking about crystals, but...
That's a podcast or a crystal podcast. Wait. What? Did I just say that's a crystal for a crystal?
For a crystal podcast, really? But yeah, so that's something we'll go into different podcasts. But yeah, like I have crystals in every room. I have crystals everywhere, basically. And I use them more as a passive, like positive energy for each part of the room. Or if I'm doing something like I actually have crystals in here somewhere. I think I moved them, but for different intentions of just having them here, like on my person or on my desk or... So that's more passive, but it's just the idea of having that positive energy around, having that focuser there, getting those answers in a way that I need to get them, being able to ask those questions, whether it's to my grandmother or my great-grandfather or to whoever, since I can't just pick up a phone anymore. So that's kind of...
cry? Can we not? I'm just like over here, like I'm gonna inhale some monk natural oil diffusers, try to calm down because Ranger's over here dropping emotional bombs on us. I didn't sign up for this today. I knew this would be a topic of conversation, but I didn't sign up for this today.
And what's funny is that I almost guaranteed any of the rest of them that were more specific about tarot, about crystals, about candles, it'll probably still be cry fest.
I quit this podcast.
Oh
You're
God.
on your own.
Oh, well, bye guys. We got 4 in. We're good. Peace out.
Bye. Oh my God. Okay, I love that though. I don't know. Like I love witchcraft. Also, I still love that like you got into the craft because your grandma. Like I love that so much, honestly. And,
yeah, if there was nothing else I got from her, I got that.
Yeah.
And there's been some days legitimately where that has been the most comforting thing is at the end of the day, I know I have that.
I'm going to order, now I want to get a bunch of raw clear quartz. I want raw rose quartz because rose quartz is my favorite crystal by far. But rose quartz is so expensive because it's such a, I'm trying to think of the word, like it's kind of like, diamonds are also like this. I can't remember, they have like infatuated price relative to how common they actually are or rare they are, just because
it's because people want them more than the others.
Yeah, they have, and there's no like specific word or phrase for them that I can't remember what it is, but like certain crystals have like an infatuated price.
I know the term. It's right at the back of my mind, like what it's called, but I cannot.
Basically, what it is like certain crystals have been given higher things because they look prettier. Like diamonds are gorgeous, but they're not as uncommon as their price would lead you to believe. Same thing in rose quartz. Like quartz as a general sense is like a really common thing, but we'll get into more detail about that in different podcasts.
Yeah, in a different podcast.
And it's not like myself, Matthew, why do you practice the craft of the witch?
Yeah. Yeah, why do you practice?
For me, I guess it's kind of like a similar to some stuff you said. Like, it's a good form for like concentration. I haven't gone into um spell work really at all. I've tried like some basic stuff that didn't work because like I just didn't do anything properly, so literally nothing happened. Or backfired actually. Yeah, I did some. Yeah, we're not gonna talk about it. But like I do have like candles that I need to do, like a bunch of pink candles. I want to do like a bunch of like glove spells for like my self love and confidence and stuff. For like just like little tiny candles that are all broken. They fell out of my container.
Oh
I have them in. They
no.
broke. Remember, I think I told you before. We talked about it.
Oh yeah, I think we did.
I had like but when I was in Virginia, I have like this container and all my crap for which all my crystals and stuff are in my pod that's going to be here in a week. But my container I had all my witchy stuff in, it fell at some point. I don't remember what happened, but it fell or my candles fell off. I don't remember which it was, but almost every single one of my pink candles fell and broke. And it's like candles that are like maybe roughly the size of my monk head.
Yeah.
A little larger, technically, just like lengthwise, just like one that'll burn for a few hours, like good for small spells. But pretty much they all broke and cracked. None of them got like completely broke. Like the wick is still intact, so I can actually like smooth the wax out again. But I remember Ranger told me something that like if it was probably meant to be. If it like something along the like those lines where like if it happened, it was meant to be. And I'm like, I kind of like that because I feel like it could give doing a spell work on a cracked candle, like as cracked as some of the effects are, could give it an interesting outcome. Don't know if it's a smart thing to do because cracked, but it could be interesting. But also I just love it because I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, I very much so focus on the spiritual side. Is what I love putting my energy into. I still need to get my own spirit board. It's just they're kind of expensive and I want to get a decent one. I don't want to just go out and get like a normal like a store brand Ouija board. Like I've been looking at Ouija boards or spirit boards for like over like a year basically now on Etsy, trying to find one that like really stands out to me and but I'm like I can get past my own anxiety to buy. But like I started with tarot actually. One of my friends actually bought me my first tarot deck, which is this guy. Which I only have these two with me. I have my first tarot deck and then my favorite tarot deck. Which this is just my Crow Tarot is just the one that I happen to have the strongest connection with. And I love this deck so much. I use it all the time. I have of all my tarot decks is by far my strongest connection of all of them. Which is weird because it's the one that I normally get drawn to in doing readings, that or my animal spirit guide, which is a different form of tarot that uses like animals and elements and whatnot. But yeah, so I like with my spirit work, it's like nice because it gives me a way I think to channel my spirituality, which I've always like I mentioned earlier, like I've always had like this like connection to the spiritual world, like more so than other people. And so being able to do the craft and use it to focus on the spirit side of it and work with like just spirits as a general sense in my craft is something I like. And because I want to work with spirits with my craft, I do this part of the reason why I'm focusing on this. It's helping me strengthen my spiritual connection to the spiritual world. It's helping me do things I've always wanted to do in my life when it comes to spirit work. And like I love I have two pendulums. I have an opalite one, and then I have my come here. I have my rose quartz one, and I love both of these to death. Like they are some of my favorite things ever. And they go crazy like when I move them. But we're going to talk about pendulums more specifically in a later thing. But also it's just very energizing too. I find like it's draining to an extent. I feel like, but it's like also gives me a wave of like energy and motivation and stuff. But yeah, I guess that's like it's why I focus. I do the craft just because it's like I guess it makes me happy. It's nice having something that I'm able to get my attention on. Like and I go in and out of it a lot based off what's going on in my life and stuff like that. Like right now I have like a bunch of other stuff I'm worrying about, and also people just in my streams haven't been asking for tarot readings and stuff like that. So I haven't really been doing a lot of tarot readings. And I kind of want to recharge all of my witchy stuff in Moonlight, which all my stuff actually gets here before the next full moon, which is really nice. I think, is our podcast go up on the next full moon?
I think I'm not sure actually.
I feel like it does.
Yeah, yes it does.
That is beautiful timing.
That's
Like,
hysterical.
because oh no, wait, no, it doesn't. I lied. The next full moon's on the third. Doesn't post this one until the third. Because the next full moon's on the third.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so I had my week screwed up. Yeah, so did I.
We both just like got that. We just both. This is right. It's the 23rd. It's going to be the first on Saturday.
Yeah, we're doing great.
That would have been perfect timing, though, actually, if we would have been able to upload this on there. I mean, technically, we still could just record another podcast like tomorrow before our streams. Like, let's go, like another podcast, even though we haven't talked about anything for the podcast after this.
Yeah, basically. We probably should do that. That might be important. But, yeah, so, yeah. I actually find it interesting you're trying to get into like the spirit boards because I just cannot with the spirit boards.
Spirit boards have a really negative connotation. I mean, you could argue the same, like pendulums and tarot technically have the same risk of a spirit board. It's just because spirit boards have been advertised as a board game. It's why you see so much negative things about them and people ending up in deep doo-doo. It's because people don't learn the proper methods of working with a spirit board. There's ways to work with them. Also, I've learned that pendulums are actually I love myself a planchette. I love planchettes. The pendulums are actually a better form of a better tool to use or instrument. I prefer calling them spiritual instruments because I feel disrespectful to something that normally has a spirit connected to them to call them a tool. But that's just my personal thing. But you have a little bit more control because pendulums move a lot with your own energy, whereas planchettes do as well. But you have a little bit more control with a pendulum because of the way pendulums work naturally. They work more so off of your own electricity and natural energies over a planchette, which is more of you, potentially one or two other people, and the spirit.
Okay.
I've seen a few. I've been researched that a little bit, and a few people have said the same thing basically, where it's like a little bit safer, but also if you do the proper precautions, like you should be fine. Like you could always you have some like clear quartz around you. I think smoky amethyst is a good one, or not? Yeah, smoky amethyst, smoky quartz. Black obsidian, I think, is another good crystal to have just like around you when you have spirit things. Like I have like a few different crystals. I always keep like my tarot decks. Well, normally they're all in my moving truck now, but like it's just like some random or like crystals that like mean a lot to you. Like I'm a Scorpio, and Scorpios have a really strong connection to rose quartz. Is part of the reason why I think it's my favorite crystal. Putting those with like spiritual objects and stuff too can help ground, I think, a little bit, and it'll be a little bit safer. You can also burn like protection candles and stuff if it makes you more comfortable too. I looked a lot into spirit work. Hello.
Yeah, I was gonna say you probably looked a lot more into it to me. I was just always raised around the idea that like spirit Ouija boards in particular. Let me specify Ouija boards, just for not safe to use. And
I feel like Ouija boards because Ouija board is the brand of a video, like a board game.
A board game, which I'm really curious how it became a board game. So I might research into that. Like, how did a Ouija board become a board game?
That'd probably be a good one to do before. Because I think we were going to do I think we were talking about doing pendulums and spirit boards as like one pod, as like a future podcast. Because tarot, I think, deserves its own
podcast. I could go on for ages about tarot. I have stories all over the place about tarot. So.
Yeah, like stories talking about like what cards mean. I mean, or like generalized, because a lot of cards do have some of the same meanings or similar meanings. But we can probably look that up too, because that's actually something I don't know how it got turned into a board game. But it'd be interesting to see. But no, yeah, I like spirit. I would say spirit boards. Again, Ouija board is a specific thing. They're technically similar. They're Ouija boards are based off of spirit boards, but Ouija boards are technically just a board game that was created, and so I feel like those immediately have
bad connotations
and bad juju and attract the wrong thing because there's such a negative energy that already surrounds them because of what society has put on them, whether or
Yeah.
not that's like they're fake and don't work, or like they only bring trouble. Whereas if you were to look on Etsy for like some spirit boards, like I think you would have a more likely chance of being safe. And again, like having the right crystals, I think with you protect, you can even like do a protection sigil that you keep your spirit board on, which is something I would probably do. I'd probably like have like a specific spot where my spirit board is always there, unless I'm like going to cleanse it in the moon, in a full moon. And you can have, because you can make your own sigils, just make your own protective sigil like that will encompass that your spirit board was sitting. So like the large circle, and then it's kind of like, I guess, kind of like a pentagram, but with like your sigil in the inside of it. I think would be a good idea.
Yeah.
If that makes sense to like Ranger or anyone else, because like you could draw, like I know like one way I learned to make sigils is like if it was going to be for protection, I think it's like you take out the vowels and then you just kind of layer the consonants on top of each other from a word. So if it was like, let's say love, you would just put like the L and V on top of each other, and that could be the sigil. There's different ways to do it, but we'll talk about sigils and stuff in more detail in the future podcast.
Yeah, that'll definitely be one we probably touch on at a later time, later date.
Yeah, sigils are another form of witchcraft. What's up? There's a lot. I think, speaking of spirit things, I think runes can be considered like a spiritual work thing that I probably should look into more, but I haven't. I was like tarot. Okay, now we're gonna touch on pendulums a little bit, and then I've been like passively looking at spirit boards and stuff as well. But yeah, I think honestly at this point, I think we've talked about everything. I don't know how long. I think this maybe ended up as an hour. I don't know, but I don't think there's a lot more to go into detail with this.
And there's probably a lot more as far as like under like why we're involved or what got us involved, but that fits more into like when we're talking about crystals or talking about candle magic specifically.
Yeah, I mean, we also talked about that technically with our first exposure, what got us into it, and why we practice. I feel like all those kind of touched on that already too.
Yeah, there's also like more specific things that I'm sure we'll talk about once we're on the actual topics. Like I said, with tarot in particular, I have stories I could tell you about just some of the readings on myself, because I don't usually do readings on others, but like readings I've done or questions I've asked
on just tarot, because
just like stories that I'm not going into tonight, because this is a little bit more of a general why are we involved in this type of podcast. So there's definitely more we'll be talking about, guys, as we kind of go through each of these topics whenever we get around to each of them. With that even being the case, guys, like if there's anything in particular regarding this type of topic that you guys want to hear about or us talk about or that you're curious about, please just in the comments or on Twitter, if we actually remember to post about the podcast, let us know what you want to hear about. Like, is there
why was there so much aggression in that?
If there is any specific kind of like witchcraft or even anything specific to the stuff we've talked about like tonight, like if there's anything you like, oh, that story was interesting, tell me more about that. Like, just
tell me more.
What are you guys curious about? What do you guys want to know?
I mean, and because of the way our podcast works, like we're definitely going to need, we've talked about it before, we'll probably end up doing like some podcast in the future. We'll have more podcast episodes that are like more like research based. Like we do have plans to do like true crime podcasts and stuff like that down the line. But like if you guys ever want like a podcast episode that's just like storytelling, whether that's like witchy stuff or just like stuff that like has happened in our lives, and like you guys want to know things like, why am I a homosexual? Or like stuff like that, just like stories in general. Let us know in the comments. Also, if you're into witchcraft, maybe answer some of the questions that we answered, like your first exposure, what got you into the craft, and like
why do you practice it?
Why do you continue to do it or whatever. And sorry about like not posting. We were doing like every other week, so I do apologize. It was kind of my fault. We both kind of dropped the ball a little bit, but because I was moving last week, it became a little bit difficult to solidify a time because we both kind of forgot about it, and then I was just really busy. And we were both kind of busy. I was busy moving.
We both have had a lot of weird stuff going on in the background that we're not talking about on the podcast because it's not necessarily either A, appropriate, or B, it's just not on topic.
But if you go to our streams, we might talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, on stream we talk about it all day and night, but as far as podcasts, But yeah, no, there's just been a lot going on. I'm hoping, personally, that probably next couple weeks we'll start trying to get more consistent. We'll see how well that goes since my family's coming in next week. So
I'm also going to hopefully be getting a day job soon because your boy needs a car. So, you know, or if someone wants to just sugar daddy me without any sugar in return, I wouldn't be mad. If someone wants to slide $2,000,
man, that's a heck of a deal
way,
right there. Let me give you money and get nothing in return.
I'll just put my Cash App in the description and my Venmo. If someone just happens to slide $2,000 into my Venmo or Cash App so I can buy like a Craigslist car, I wouldn't be mad. Just saying. To buy a car. Look, there's a number of cars with $2,000 or less on Craigslist. There's a car that I buy that was my first car. It was a 1998 Subaru Legacy Outback, and I fucking missed that car. And there is one, or at least it was on the Facebook market for like almost $2,000, and I want it so bad. It is such a good car, and I miss it. Anyway,
now we know Maddie needs money.
Look, we don't know what the next episode's gonna be yet. We haven't really talked about it. It'll be something.
About it tonight. Maybe. But
anyway.
Just keep an eye on Twitter because I'm hoping, especially since I am winding down on school. I only have about 2 or 3 more weeks left. So I'm hoping maybe Twitter we will start being a little bit more active.
Did you forget the word active for a second?
I was trying to think if I wanted to use the word active, and that's the closest word.
Active.
More active on Twitter. Actually, maybe posting, asking for your guys' feedback or questions before we record. Maybe we'll consider it. We'll think about it.
Do that. We have never done. No, we tried that once, and then never again. Because it just didn't work.
Yeah, which maybe just is because we're a new podcast and don't have viewers like that yet. But that's okay. We're still gonna try. We're gonna keep trying. It's okay. But just keep an eye on Twitter because we'll post the next subject on there, and of course we'll post when we do our videos up on YouTube. And are we premiering it this time?
No, I don't think it's worth it.
Okay.
At least not right now.
Yeah. So it'll probably end up going up, I think it's 6 p.m. Central on Monday?
Yes,
that sounds right. 6 p.m. Central on Monday.
And that's 7 p.m. Eastern or 5 p.m. Pacific.
4 p.m. your time.
No, 5 p.m. You're 2 hours ahead. 4 p.m. 4 p.m.
I was going to say, if it's 6 my time.
And then that'd be 5 p.m. Mountain. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Good. Fixed it. There we are.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much for everyone who watched. Just leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe if you haven't. Also, hit that bell notification because then you get notified whenever we have a new video up.
Exactly.
And we will maybe, hopefully, probably see you in the next video.
Yeah, bye, guys.
Mwah.